It's the final race weekend of the season for the Ginetta Racing Championships, and we have still got a handful of championships up for grabs. Where better to settle the scores than here on the magnificent Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Cars lining up on the grid already for our first racing action of the weekend, and it's the turn of the Ginetta GT Academy drivers to take centre stage, which is something I think they'll be doing all weekend long, really. This is one of the tighter championships that we have arriving here at the final round. Both classes still very much up for grabs, and we've seen plenty of twists and turns in the championship story over the last handful of rounds. If you tuned into the Donington Park races a few weeks ago, you'll know all that I'm talking about. It was a topsy-turvy weekend, which saw really all of the championship contenders getting themselves into a little bit of trouble along the way, but in the end, it was by the end of the weekend pretty tight coming here to the final round at Brands Hatch. As I said, a pretty fearsome venue for our final races of the year. The Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, not one that the drivers will have a huge amount of experience at, particularly those drivers in the academy, because this is very much the entry-level Ginetta Racing Series. Lots of these drivers will be completing their first ever season of racing, and to have an opportunity to race on a circuit like this is, well, a great opportunity, but certainly has presented a challenge for a few of them. And already, actually, after qualifying, a couple of drivers maybe a little bit out of position, which we'll get to in a moment or two. It's Mike Taylor, though, who has the pole position. Mike Taylor is the rookie class championship leader arriving here at Brands Hatch, and really just needs a trouble-free weekend, and he should be lifting the championship trophy on Sunday evening. But trouble-free weekends can sometimes be a bit difficult to come by in the Ginetta GT Academy. Often a series that sees incidents aplenty during the races, shall we say, and it's sometimes a case of dodging those to the best of your ability. Taylor on pole then, Harry Gamble alongside. Harry is second in the rookie class championship, the only driver now that mathematically can beat Mike. James Nicholas then lines up in third place. James no longer mathematically in contention, despite that brilliant start to the season that he had. Luke Shaw lines up alongside him on row 2. Thomas Balfe and Paul Thomas then share the third row of the grid, and down on row number 4 we have Peter Thompson and Marc Elman, and Marc is a driver of note. He is second in the GTA class championship, not that far behind Julian Wantling, 13 points the difference, and he's out-qualified Julian, who, as you can see, starts 9th on the grid with Emma Tomlinson for company on row 5. 6th row for Mike West and Lucy Hodgson. The 7th row of the grid will be shared by Charlotte Lowe and Robin Grimwood. And then guest drivers, we here towards the back, Charlotte, Robin, also Oliver Fordham. He also not therefore scoring points as a result of running in the guest category. Gilbert Verdian will start 16th. And down at the back of the field is Jamie Caudle after a disqualification for a yellow flag infringement, easy for me to say, in qualifying earlier on today. And so Jamie Caudle, regular frontrunner in the series, is going to have to start from the back of the grid. So that sets the scene quite nicely, I think, for 20 minutes of action to kickstart our finals weekend here at Brands Hatch. And like I said, the rookie class championship perhaps more or less settled now in the hands of Mike Taylor, provided he doesn't pick up a penalty this weekend. But in GTA, Julian Wantling and Marc Elman, both very close together. It's after dropped scores, 382 points for Julian Wantling and 369 for Marc Elman. 13, as I said, between them. Now, we won't really know who the champions are until we get to the end of race number 3 tomorrow afternoon, because of the slightly quirky drop score system in this category. You don't drop individual races, you drop your 2 lowest scoring weekends, and so obviously until the weekend's done we won't really know whether this will be a dropped score or not, but we'll play it race by race, and certainly we know that Marc Elman needs to try and outscore Julian Wantling in all 3 races if he's going to have a chance of stealing the GTA crown. 2 by 2 then they come off Clearways and through Clark Curve. The safety car will peel into the pit lane, and we will be ready to go racing here at Brands Hatch. You ride on board there with Julian Wantling, the GTA Championship leader, the green and gold car that starts just ahead of him on the left-hand side. That is Marc Elman, his title rival. Mike Taylor and Harry Gamble set to go door-to-door for the race lead as our first race of the weekend gets underway now. They accelerate towards Paddock Hill Bend, and Mike Taylor has that, in theory, preferred inside line, but Gamble, I'm sure, will try to stand his ground on the outside. I don't think it will work, so no, Taylor gets the holds on to the lead, drifts out wide on the exit, though. Gamble is up the inside. There's a collision further back. Paul Thomas sideways and will just dig his way out of the gravel trap. I think that was with some assistance, but yes, Harry Gamble did get to the inside of Taylor at Druids, and he does now take the lead away. So Gamble leads, Taylor second, Nicholas third, and as they drop down the hill, that is Luke Shaw, I think, still in in 4th position. Keep an eye on Jamie Cordell coming from the back of the grid as well in the number 51 car. But at the head of the field, good start made then by Harry Gamble. Couldn't contest the lead into Paddock Hill Bend, but we see that so often here at Brands Hatch, the switchback manoeuvre on the exit of the corner, and it worked a treat for Harry, who has got the lead of the race away. James Nicholas now coming up to challenge for 2nd place. And look here in the GTA class, Julian Wantling is ahead of Marc Elman, so that's crucial. Julian Wantling ahead then of his big rival, and we'll have to see now whether Marc can draw upon that pace advantage that he did have in qualifying this morning to challenge once again for the class lead. Challenge definitely on here for 2nd place overall. James Nicholas forcing a defensive manoeuvre out of the poles into Mike Taylor, and that's not really a place you want to be defending. Out the back here, it's all about high-speed cornering, momentum, not losing that momentum, and by defending into the corner, you will almost certainly be slower off it. That was what was happening there for Mike Taylor, but he holds on to the 2nd place for now. Dropping Luke Shaw slightly. Thomas Balfe is next, then Julian Wantling. So Julian Wantling 6th place overall. But he really has eyes only for one driver, that driver being Marc Elman, who was moving up to challenge, I think, as they went into clearways, not to challenge Wantling, but to try and get one place closer to Julian. Wasn't able to find a way through, ultimately. That's the 47 car that he's trying to get past of Emma Tomlinson. So Emma Tomlinson, who is another GTA class driver, is just in front of Marc Elman at the end of lap 1. So Gamble leads, Taylor 2nd, and that gap came down actually towards the end of the lap. It was a good final sector for Mike Taylor. Maybe just a little bit lacking in confidence on cold tyres. It looks like a bright sunny day. It is a bright sunny day here at Brands Hatch, but it's rather chilly. The track temperature certainly out the back will not be terribly high. Yes, now Mike Taylor seems to be warming to the challenge, doesn't he? Peeks to the inside into Surtees. With a good overtaking opportunity there. The tight uphill left-hander rattles the curve on the inside. Gamble rattles the curve on the outside, and they both come off the corner pretty evenly. Slipstream now starts to take effect. You're right on board with Mike Taylor. 2nd position then for the championship leader, who will desperately want to go for this, but also knows that really the only thing realistically which can rob him of this championship right now is a penalty. If you get a penalty, you cannot drop that weekend score. So if he got a penalty and for example, had a non-finish later on in the weekend, he would have to count it, and that would then open the door for Harry Gamble potentially to come and steal the championship from him. So as much as Taylor will want to go for this, he's got to be clever. He's got to make sure that he doesn't get himself involved in anything that could see him in the clerk of the course's office. He's defending the inside line up towards clearways, and that is why he didn't have a great run out of Sterling's. And so James Nicholas to the outside on the way in. Again, teeing up the better exit, the tighter line through Clark Kerr, but Mike Taylor wise to that and manages to keep the inside line covered. So this time the lead gap will go out. It was 0.4 of a second. It is now nearly 0.7 of a second. And it's Harry Gamble, the leader, Mike Taylor 2nd, Nicholas 3rd. Further back, Wantling still ahead of Tomlinson and Elman, so no change in the GTA class either. And of course, as these leading 3 start to maybe trip over each other a little bit, Luke Shaw and Thomas Balfe also start to reel them in. So it could become a 5-way shootout this for the race lead. As again, Mike Taylor, despite having lost time at the end of the previous lap, on this sort of indie section of the track, if you like, is now starting to close back in again on Gamble. He's later on the brakes, definitely into Surtees, and looks to try not necessarily make the move, but just trying to distract Harry Gamble. A flash of colour in the mirrors can sometimes cause a bit of a mistake from the leading driver, but Harry Gamble, experienced enough, didn't put a foot wrong and continues to lead the way down into Hawthorne. On the brake, slightly wider turn in there for Harry. Never quite made the apex, and that's why Mike Taylor was able to close in a bit through the quick right-hander. First of the 3 quick right-handers at the back of the track. Further back then, Julian Wantling continuing to lead from Emma Tomlinson. Now, Tomlinson also runs in the GTA class, so Emma could have a bearing in this championship battle as well. If she were to overtake Julian Wantling, she'd be taking points away from him, as well as, of course, putting Wantling and Elman back together. Behind them is Peter Thompson, the number 6 car. Now, Peter is a rookie, not a GTA class driver. The cars, by the way, if you're new to the series, absolutely the same across the 2 classes. It's just driver experience, and the rookie class sort of does what it says on the tin. The GTA class is for those with a bit more experience, but the cars all absolutely identical. 2nd lap in a row there, Harry Gamble gaps Mike Taylor in the 2nd half of the lap, but it was this part of the circuit where Mike looked quick on the previous tour. And again, carried good speed there through Paddock. He's late on the brakes into Druids, and will halve that deficit, I think, by the time they start dropping back down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. Really awkward corner this. It's 90 degrees, but it's a steeply downhill approach. There's no camber through the corner to support you. Very easy to understeer wide, as Thomas Balfe just did. That's Peter Thompson and Marc Elman. Marc Elman is off up at Druid's corner. He's tangled with Peter Thompson, and this has big championship ramifications in the GTA class. Marc Elman then pointing the wrong way. The car looks like it's dug in quite a lot at the back, and that is, well, not the way that Julian Wantling would want to steal an advantage in the championship, but it's certainly not bad news for the current championship leader, because he is in the lead of the class and his big rival is not going to score any points. Now, this is where the mathematics gets even more complicated, because this is now potentially going to become a dropped round for Marc Elman. Depending on how his other two races go. Out of the car is Thompson. Elman, I think, is still in the car, possibly in the hope that he can dig his way back into the race, but I don't think that's going to happen. And we may, of course, I'd say likely, will need a safety car here, which is a shame, because Mike Taylor is really starting to give Harry Gamble a tough time. Closes right in into Sterling's, but again, he's a bit slow on the exit then. James Nicholas ducking and diving behind him, but ultimately they stay in the same order, turning into clearways. Taylor with a good run through the right-hander, tight line on the exit, but Harry Gamble suddenly seemed to slow, and that's why the yellow flags are out, the safety car boards are out as well, and as we expected, the two cars off at the top of the hill are going to need to be recovered under safety car conditions. That was nice to see, a handshake there between Peter Thompson and Marc Elman. Marc, understandably, looking frustrated, but no hard feelings, obviously, between the two of them. Now, let's take a look at exactly what happened here. Peter Thompson and Marc Elman then. And, well, that's what happened. Peter Thompson up the inside, up the curb, collides with the right rear corner of Marc Elman's car. There is damage and possibly a puncture on the left front of Thompson's car. I think that was probably as a result of the contact rather than the cause of it, but you never know. And either way, the result is the same, isn't it? Elman out of the race, and that is crucial for the GTA Championship. Wantling, by the way, did lose the lead to Emma Tomlinson on that lap. So there, look, car 47, Emma Tomlinson now leading the GTA class. So if ever there was a good time for Julian Wantling to lose the lead, it was just after his title rival had ended up off in the gravel at Druids, because he can afford to lose the lead. What he didn't really want was Marc Elman to be harassing him, but that, of course, now won't be the case. There is one of our guest drivers, Oliver Fordham, the number 4 car, novice cross on the back of his car. Back end of the season, you often see this drivers maybe dipping their toe in the water ahead of a possible campaign in 2025. And I'm sure Ginetta working hard in the background to ensure that next year's grid is even bigger, even more competitive than the 24 season has been. There's Emma Tomlinson then, leading the GTA class, as I said. Julian Wantling only 1 place behind her. But with the demise now of Marc Elman, the next GTA driver is Mike West, who actually is only a couple of places further back. In fact, the only car between Wantling and West is Jamie Cordell, who, remember, came from the back of the grid. There he is, look, the white turquoise car coming towards us, number 51. Jamie Cordell, 17th on the grid, is 8th at the moment. Of course, did gain 2 places as a result of Elman and Thompson's clash, but there he is, Jamie Cordell, the E3 Sport prepared car, doing a good job coming through the field. There, Mike West, who, like I said, is 3rd in the GTA category. And as the safety car will lead them around, this is going to take a couple of laps, I suspect, to get cleared. Safety cars and the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit often go hand in hand, don't they? It's a circuit that really leaves very little room for error, although this incident has happened not out in the countryside, but up at what is always an action hotspot, Druids. It's a good place to try and launch an attack if you get it right, but unfortunately that time hasn't worked out particularly well for either of them. So Mike Taylor then, his challenge against Harry Gamble has to be put on hold. Did look a little bit quicker than Harry though, didn't he? Once he sort of got settled down. There's the damage to the left front corner of Thompson's car. Now the tyre may be a little bit low, I think, but I do think the steering and suspension damage likely as a result of the clash, but only the drivers will be able to tell us, I suppose. He did have a big lock-up going in, though. That could suggest maybe the tyre was going down already. But they will already, I'm sure, have had that discussion, the two of them. Marc's car, I think, is relatively undamaged. It's just sort of beached on the lip at the edge of the circuit. You can see there, the front wheels aren't even in contact with the ground, so the gravel trap doing its job, slowing the car down before it made contact with the barrier, but digging the car in, and ultimately no way he was ever going to get going again. Guest drivers at the back of the field, led by Charlotte Lowe at the moment. The guest drivers, for reference, don't score points, so if they do start mixing it with some of the title contenders. They don't score any points. They don't therefore take points away from the championship challengers. And that's the same across all 3 of the Ginetta championships. So that will be relevant potentially in the Ginetta juniors later on in the day. But they are out there learning. They run with 25 kilos of ballast in the car as well, which is, I think, sort of designed to stop them interfering too much at the front of the field. But if you can go well as a guest driver, then that's pretty impressive, especially around a circuit like this, where that extra ballast will not be doing you any favours. But yeah, Charlotte Lowe, who's done a bit of Ginetta racing actually over the last few years. Ahead of her is Robin Grimwood. Now, Charlotte actually out-qualified Robin by a couple of tenths, but Robin's found a way through, as now the race is stopped. So the red flag is out, just under 9 minutes of the race to go. So obviously the extrication of the Marc Elman car is taking a bit longer than anticipated, I can only imagine. This sort of decision is only usually taken in these sort of circumstances because they realise it's going to take too long to get the cars out of the way, so that by the time we go racing again, there will be not really enough of the race left. So the cars will be brought down, I presume, onto the grid. Yes, there are marshals waiting on the grid to collect them, and they'll restart, of course, in the order that they're running now, not in the original grid position. So Mike Taylor doesn't get to reclaim his pole position, although that might sort of work in his favour. Harry Gamble was able to make the outside of row 1 work on the initial start. Maybe Mike Taylor will now be able to do the same thing. So the track blockage up at Druids, we think, might be the reason for this. And yes, there are quite a few recovery vehicles I can see out of the window that are in the middle of the road, which does rather make going around Druids, even at safety car speed, a bit more of a challenge. So yeah, that's the reason for the race stoppage, it would seem. Should only be a brief one, I think. The cars shouldn't take too long to get out of the way. We hope, because we want to go racing. And the championship then taking a big turn for Marc Elman. We think he's now going to be about 63 points back, we think, in the championship. But of course, this all kind of, you can't really calculate the points yet, because this will now become a drop round for Marc, presumably, depending on what happens in the other races. It could still become a drop round for Julian Wantling. If he has a disaster, either in the resumption of this race or either of the 2 races tomorrow, it could also become a drop round for him, because they don't drop their lowest races, they drop their lowest scoring weekends. So at the moment, I can tell you, Julian Wantling is dropping 63-pointer and a 75-pointer. He's dropping more points, considerably more points actually, than Marc Elman is. They both had a penalty at Donington Park earlier in the season, so they can't drop Donington. But the rounds that Julian Wantling is dropping, that's 63 and the 75. 63 was Silverstone, 75 Snetterton, but actually he scored more points at Snetterton than he did at Donington Park, if you're still following. But he can't drop Donington because he had a penalty that weekend, as did Amy Tomlinson, actually. And actually, I correct myself, Marc Elman does not have a round that he can't drop because of penalties. He's had a pretty clean season, got himself involved in a couple of scrapes at Donington last time, not necessarily of his own doing, but he was running in a good position in one of the races, then got tapped into a spin at the Goddard's hairpin, I seem to recall. As I said, Donington, all 3 races really at Donington were drama-filled, with James Nicholas and Mike Taylor tangling at the first corner again, just as they did when they were there earlier on in the season. And even Julian Wantling didn't seem particularly on the pace, actually, that weekend, but was at least able to come out of it with a solid points haul. It was a 92-point weekend, actually his 3rd highest point-scoring weekend of the year, whereas Marc Elman only ended up scoring 1 point more than him, actually, 93 that weekend. Just loved the end of the season. Dropped scores, maths, not generally the realm of a commentator, so we'll leave it to Ginetta to officially give us the points updates as the weekend goes on. There is some good news. Marc Elman's car is on the move. Now, it won't help him in this race because he won't be able to take the restart. He was, after all, part of the cause of the red flag. There is a bit of damage. Look, it's crabbing a bit at the back, so the right rear corner that took a whack has knocked the geometry out slightly, but at least the car's up and running. He'll get it back to the team and they'll get it fixed as soon as they can, so should be easily fixable for tomorrow's races, during which Marc Elman will have quite the task ahead of him, because he's going to absolutely now need to start beating Julian Wantling and really hope that something happens to Julian that would alter maybe the point situation again in Marc's favour. But that is tomorrow. They've got 3 races this weekend, 1 today, 2 tomorrow. Same for all of our Ginetta Championships, so we'll have more action from the juniors and the Ginetta GT Championship later on in the day. And the Ginetta Junior Championship in particular, that one looking pretty spicy, heading into the final event. Right, Elman's car in the pit lane. The other car of Peter Thompson is not yet removed from the scene up at Druids, and they're the arms waving in the air for the team members. What on earth happened? Well, they'll be able to find out from Marc now. There is Thompson's car. So that's the one that's taking a bit of recovering for whatever reason. They're going to have to put it up on the flatbed truck. Now, this I can only assume is because of that broken steering on the front of the car. As I said, it was hard to tell the first time we saw the incident whether that was already damaged before the collision or whether it was damaged in the collision. But the end result is that Marc Elman's car surely is out of the race. Well, he's out of the car, helmet off. So, yes, I don't think we're going to see Marc again. Cars have not yet been re-gridded, by the way. They are on the grid, but they're not yet back in their grid positions. Harry Gamble there, who is not really going to be enjoying himself right now, you would have to say. And having done all of the hard work of getting into the race lead, now has to sit and wait, and he'll have to do it all over again now, or at least defend that race lead all over again as and when the race resumes. Harry's had a really good season, though, actually. He was a bit of a standout performer through the mid part of the year. Had particularly good run, I seem to recall, at Anglesey and Snetterton. Yes, he did. Started off well at Alton Park, actually. He was the highest scorer at Alton Park at the start of the year. James Nicholas then was the best scorer at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit, and then Mike Taylor really didn't get going until Anglesey. They had a quadruple header, let's call it, at Anglesey, at the Anglesey G-Fest, Ginetta Festival, where they had 4 races over the weekend. And Mike Taylor really was the standout performer that weekend. He outscored the next best of the championship contenders, James Nicholas, by 60 points that weekend. It was an astonishing set of races for Mike Taylor. And that is why he really then sort of stole a march mid-season. He's been defending that lead ever since. And like I said, on the verge of the championship now, really, barring penalties this weekend. He should be the champion at the end of Sunday evening. Thomas Balfe, that is, I beg your pardon, in the Garage 59 liveried car. Now, he was sort of just tagging along with the lead group at the time of the red flag. And again, we'll be looking now for a good restart in order to challenge maybe for a podium. He's had a handful of podiums this year, I seem to recall, Thomas Balfe, sorry. And he will maybe feel that he's got an opportunity to get another one here today. Right, grid being cleared of camera operators, which is a good sign. It's not good because it means we no longer get a chance to look into the eyes of the drivers as they await a restart, but it is good news because it probably means the marshals are about to start gridding them up. If I look out of the window, Peter Thompson's car is almost on the flatbed truck, so hopefully we'll be out of the way in the next couple of minutes. And yes, the cars right on cue are brought forwards onto their grid hatchings. Harry Gamble then from pole. Mike Taylor will go to the outside. It looks like it's going to be a 9-minute restart. That time I don't think had stopped at exactly 9 minutes, so I think they've reset that now to a 9-minute restart. And are they going to pull them in single file, or is it going to be 2x2? The safety car is there, which tells me it might be a safety car. Yes, it is a safety car restart, it says on the timing screen, so it won't be a 2x2 restart. It is going to be a single file safety car restart. That makes life a little bit easier for Harry Gamble. Doesn't have to worry about Mike Taylor necessarily challenging him into the first corner, although Mike, I'm sure, will have other ideas. Luke Shaw, number 21. And 4th position, he will take the race restart. So, marshals cleared. They'll get 1 lap, I imagine, behind the safety car. And yes, confirmation from Ginetta, 9-minute restart in the order they were in at the time of the red flag. So yes, no positional changes. They're going to stay exactly as they were. And Harry Gamble on course, he hopes, for maybe another race victory, but those race victories have not been easy to come by. He's been quick all weekend. And it goes to show, really, the strength in depth these days on the in the championship. Several drivers have been competing for race wins. Just within the rookie class alone, for example, we've had wins for Mike Taylor, for Harry Gamble, obviously for James Nicholas, you'd expect that, but also we've had on the top step of the podium Thomas Balfe, twice a winner this season is Thomas. Both of those wins coming at Snetterton, actually, the first 2 races. He then helpfully didn't finish the 3rd race, but was on course for a really good points haul that weekend. And in the GT Academy class, well, everyone's had a win, really. Julian Wantling's had 6, Marc Elman's had 7, 3 wins for Emma Tomlinson, 1 win for Amy Tomlinson and Paul Livesey as well. And they've only had 9 point-scoring drivers competing in that class this year, and 5 of them have won a race. So pretty open competition in GTA, which really makes it a fantastic advert, doesn't it? Because this is a chance for you at home, maybe, if you want to next year, to begin your motor racing journey. And doing so with Ginetta has historically panned out pretty well for a lot of pretty well-known drivers. So if you want to get yourself on the grid, there's a good chance you'll be able to be competitive, because you get driver coaching, you get, you know, certainly if you run in the rookie class, running with the Want to Race team, they're an excellent team. They know exactly how to get the best out of a car, but also get the best out of a driver as well. And they will prepare you well for your debut season of competition. And the racing is always very, very lively as well, so you'll learn an awful lot about not only how to drive and set up the car well, but also how to race the thing. And that's really the big thing that you can't learn without doing it. You can't learn the theory of racecraft, really, can you? It's something you can only really appreciate when you've done it, so I've heard. And the rookie class of 2024 have certainly done plenty of wheel-to-wheel racing over the course of the last several months. I'm not really sure that there is obviously some sort of complication with this recovery, because still I can see Peter Thompson's car has not moved. It's still on the track. It's not yet on the back of the flatbed truck. So that is the reason for the delay. We're not just sort of sat around ramping up the drama and the tension, although certainly the drivers will be feeling that. Their heart rates are starting to creep up the longer they're sat there waiting, but there is obviously some sort of complication with getting that car on the flatbed truck. And in fact, because of that, I did just hear that we may not get a restart. It's taking them too long to get the car out of the way. And of course, we do have other races to do today. So it may be that unfortunately we're not able to get this race restarted. We'll await official confirmation of that. But the marshals back out on the grid now. Are they going to wave the cars away? That would be a real shame. We've gone past half race distance now. I would have to double check the regs, but I think that means full points would be awarded. Some championships it's 75% race distance. I'm not sure whether whether that's the case with Ginetta or not, but if it is 50% distance, full points will be awarded. If, of course, it's half points, that will have a bearing, because the points obviously will be lower than they should be. That therefore increases the likelihood of this becoming a dropped round for somebody. So again, not hearing this officially yet, but this could still be a significant moment in the championship. Not necessarily for Mike Taylor, but certainly for Julian Wantling and Marc Elman. Of course, on the flip side of that, it means Marc would lose fewer points to Julian. So, cars still sat on the grid for now. And not ideal circumstances, these for the drivers, of course, who desperately want to go racing again. But they will have a chance to do so again later in the weekend. As I said, they'll have 2 races tomorrow. And only at the end of that 3rd race of the weekend will we have any idea who the champion is going to be. In the meantime, a little bit of a impromptu air display going on over the Brands Hatch circuit. And flybys and aerial displays at Brands Hatch have often been a feature of big events. This one I don't think was planned, but spectators trackside will be enjoying it. And yes, there we go, confirmation. Race will not restart. Well, that is a shame. The Ginetta GT Academy then going no further, and we'll await news on what that means for points afterwards, probably tomorrow morning. And the results, we think, then, will be taken from the order in which they were running at at the time of the red flag, or a lap before the red flag. They will be very much provisional results, and I'm not even going to attempt to figure out what it means for the championship standings just yet. We'll wait for Ginetta to notify us of that, but it's Harry Gamble who is, we think, going to win the race. Mike Taylor second, so Harry Gamble's good run through the first few corners proving pivotal in the end. James Nicholas will settle for third, with Luke Shaw and Thomas Bowles completing the top 5. Emma Tomlinson, we think, will win the GTA class, so Julian Wantling not taking maximum points from that race, regardless of whether it's 4 points or not. But the big headline is that Marc Elman was a non-finisher, so still advantage Wantling in the championship. Jamie Cordell, Mike West and Paul Thomas complete the top 10. Lucy Hodgson 11th. Robin Grimwood was the top guest driver home in 12th, ahead of Charlotte Lowe and Oliver Fordham, with Gilbert Verdium the last runner. Marc Elman and Peter Thompson, of course, not reaching the checkered flag. So, a dramatic race. Let's take a look back at some of the highlights. Really, the big highlight was at the start of the race when Harry Gamble was able to wriggle away past Mike Taylor, exiting the first corner. Taylor had pole position, Gamble had the wider outside line on the way in. He cut back to the inside and then got the inside line for Druid's corner behind. Peter Thompson involved in his first bit of contact, and that could be significant. Maybe that did lead to some damage to the left front corner of the car. Meanwhile, Harry Gamble was wriggling up the inside of Mike Taylor and taking the lead away coming out of Druid's corner. Try as he might, Mike Taylor could not find a way through, and then after this collision which took Marc Elman out of the race was stopped early.